Well, what's up, Buck Squad? I'm your host, Jaron Spor. I'm going to tell you why the funniest thing is probably going to happen this weekend.
I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'm going to tell you why this seasonal nightmare will come to a conclusion on Saturday.
I'm James Yarcho, and I'm going to tell you why it's just going to be more of the same.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
All right, Buck Squad, this is our midweek episode. And for those that are new or just don't know, this is just something we do, extra content we do 2 times a week. We do a post game, then we do a midweek episode. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does a great job over there at Locked On Bucs. But we want to dive into our preview with the Panthers. The game will be on Saturday. A lot of people, like Ryan and I talked about this on Sunday's show. It was a lot of people misconstrued it as a win and in kind of thing because they kept forgetting about the Falcons. Well, the Falcons made things very interesting with their upset win over the Rams. That was a crazy game, 21-0. Then the Rams come all the way back. Looked like they were going to end up pulling it off, but no, the Falcons end up winning. And now the season rests on, yes, you have to beat the Panthers, but you also have the Saints to beat the Falcons, which I did see a crazy stat. I can't remember if it was since the Bucs bye week or just the last 6 games, but the Saints would be the winners of the division if you just took that. So they're playing great football. So maybe you'll have to cheer for them, which isn't going to be fun for Bucs fans.
Well, I mean, it's the single most Buccaneers way to not win the division, right? And it ties in, honestly, it ties in perfectly with the way this season has gone. This was a team that going into the season, we talked about they're legit. They could actually make a run to the Super Bowl. Then you're 6 weeks in, and it's not just Bucs media talking about it. It's everybody talking about it. They're number 1 in the power rankings. They're 5-1. They're fantastic. They're all of a sudden in that conversation. You have the odds-on favorite for MVP as your quarterback. And for the season to transpire the way that it has since the bye week, it would only be fitting for there to end up being a 3-team tie atop the NFC South and the Bucs losing the tiebreaker in that fashion. So, you know what? I'm here for it. Let's get all the chaos.
Yeah, no, again, I think that when we think about what would have to happen there, and as you mentioned, obviously it would be that New Orleans needs to beat Atlanta. I go back to, look, there's a bunch of failures the last several weeks, right? But I go back to that Bucs-Falcons game in particular. When you're up 2 touchdowns, you're in your creamsicles, you're celebrating the 50th anniversary season of Buccaneers football, and you do, quite frankly, I know there's a couple Super Bowls that's been better in the 21st century, but you do the most Buccaneers thing possible, and you blow a 2-touchdown lead, blow that game again, and against a team that had been struggling. They were 4-9 coming into it. They've gotten hot since then. And now you set up to where Atlanta, maybe not even on your accord, Atlanta could be the reason why you don't make in the final weekend. Now, again, I have trouble feeling bad for Tampa, although I do want to win the division. I do want this to somehow work out positively. I have trouble feeling bad for the situation because this team is 7-9. This team has the 3rd worst record in the league. Only the Arizona Cardinals and Las Vegas Raiders have had a worse record in the last 8 weeks of the season. And of course, the Cardinals won their loss, or one of their losses, to the Bucs. The Bucs won win is to the Cardinals. And so, I think that really I just have so many emotions, but I'm so frustrated that it's to the point where the Bucs can't even, all the math problems that we could do about how they were going to have better common opponents record, better divisional records, all this coming into that stretch of New Orleans and Atlanta at home, and they blow all that away, lose those games, and set up a scenario where they don't even control their own destiny after being 6-2. So again, I have trouble feeling sorry for the Bucs that this is the situation that they might win and still not get in, because this team should have been in double-digit win category right now, and instead there's no way for them to even finish over 500.
Yeah, I don't feel sorry for them because they did it to themselves. You mentioned the Falcons game you blew. You also lost to the Saints, and I know the Saints are red hot, like I mentioned, but that's a game you got to win, especially at home. They did it to themselves. I'm also of the vote that if a team has a losing record, they shouldn't make the playoff. I don't care. I don't care if you win a division. If you have a losing record, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. And I know that's what's going to end up happening. And especially if a 3-way tie, all three will be a losing record. But you should be knocked out and be replaced by a different team. But yeah, I mean, as far as the Panthers go, I looked at it. The last 10 games they've played, they've alternated wins and losses. And so that tells you that they are probably going to beat the Tampa Bay Bucs this weekend because they just lost last weekend to Seattle. And, it's weird because the Panthers did go through a stretch where it looked like they were playing pretty good football. They beat the Green Bay Packers. They beat Atlanta. They beat the Rams. That was the big one where they beat the Rams. But then they follow those games up with these just weird games. I mean, they played San Francisco tough at least, but they lose to New Orleans twice in that stretch. They lose to Seattle, and I know it was competitive at halftime, but the second half was a blowout. And they're not a very good football team either. That's the thing. If you took the high end of all the teams in the NFC South, Bucs clearly are the best team, but they're clearly playing the worst out of any of them.
Yeah, and that's why I don't have confidence in this team going into this week because they haven't given us reason to have confidence in them, right? It has been the same thing over and over and over for the last 2 months. It's Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield and whoever else is in front of a microphone saying, we're treating this as a playoff game. Our backs are against the wall. We know we have to execute. We're not worried about what they're doing. We're just worried about what we're doing. And it's the same thing over and over and over. And every single game, we see the same thing over and over and over. We see an offensive coordinator that is clueless when it comes to situational play calling. We see a defense that comes out strong and then one mistake gets made and it's a domino effect and they cannot recover from one little mistake and it just continues to snowball throughout the game. We see a team that goes out there and the scripted plays look great. The opening drive for the Bucs the last 2 weeks has been absolutely outstanding. And then it all falls apart. And then we see Baker Mayfield making a mistake in a crucial moment and that's it. He has been, it's frustrating because we know what Baker's capable of. We know what he can do. We've seen it with 2 other offensive coordinators with this team. To have him playing the way he's playing tells you that there's something wrong, obviously, with all the injuries, and we'll talk about injuries in a little bit, but there's something wrong with him personally. There's something wrong with him physically. There's something wrong with the plays that are being called, with the schemes, with all of it. And it's just, it's almost a blessing in disguise if they lose to the Panthers on Saturday, just so you can reset. You can wipe the slate clean, whatever that means. I think it means getting rid of Todd Bowles. Other people don't, but you start over and you have a new focus because this is a talented football team. But you have a lot of questions that need answers, and you can't get to any of those until the offseason begins.
Yeah, talking about Baker Mayfield, the first 9 games of the season, he throws only 2 interceptions. He's been really efficient. We know all the clutch games he had early in the season. The last 7 games, he's thrown 8 interceptions. That's not taking good enough care of the ball. I've likened, I think, probably 3 or 4 straight appearances on the show. I've likened this offense to the 2022 offense where they're just kind of eking it down the field. They can't hit explosives, and they're just trying to piece together drives 10, 12, 14 plays at a time. Well, the problem with doing it that way is you can't turn the ball over on top of the lack of explosive plays. And Baker started to do that. And then there's also been some fumbles. And again, that's usually blindside protection or something, just trying to rear back. There was one earlier in the season against Detroit. There was obviously the one last week. And again, we talked about on the Sunday show that any one of these turnovers, if you just end with a kick, end with a field goal, don't get it blocked, of course, you're talking about a situation where you tie the game at the very end rather than still need that onside kick. And so, these things, these turnovers are killing you. Your offense is already having to put together double-digit play drives, and then you're starting to turn it over at an unacceptable rate too. So, again, I think that we can talk a lot of issues from coaching staff down, but that's why I said earlier, and I think I said it during the Atlanta game. It's not that Baker is playing just awful football or that there's no hope when they're out there, that sort of thing. It's that they need him to be at the level he was to start the year. They need him to be at the level last year when Liam Cohen was calling the plays. And the second he drops below that, it gets magnified because there's no other answers for this team. They're not getting enough defensive stops. They're not a good special teams unit. They're certainly not going to create their own chaos. They're going to be the victim of chaos on special teams. And so they don't have any other ways to beat you. So when Baker does something less than stellar, it's going to have to go under the magnifying glass because, again, he's your franchise guy and you need help in other places. So, again, I think that, just the comprehensive deal with the offense it's all failed them a little bit. And then you not to mention, I know, James, you were talking about Josh Grizzard. Like, we wanted to give it some time because early in the year there were some warning signs. But, I mean, I understand when you got makeshift offensive lines, you've got a Hall of Famer out, you got Chris Godwin out. That's a lot to lose. We talked about that. But, now, okay, I know they're missing some offensive linemen, but they got every skill position player, and it hasn't changed a single thing. In fact, at times it looks worse. And so that, to me, is the offensive coordinator not enriching the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I want to touch on Baker because I'm obviously a Baker guy. But with that being said, Baker is never as good as you think, but he's never as bad as you think either. That's kind of what my motto has been for him his whole career. I always think he's in between that 12 to 15 range as a top quarterback. That's where he's at. He'll have times when he looks like a top 10, almost a top 5 guy, like he did earlier this year. And people will be saying, "Oh, he's top 5." I saw some people put him as the number 1 quarterback in the NFL this year, earlier in the year. And then I've seen people put him now with his struggles in the 20-22 range. He's not that, but he's also not the other one. He's always in that 12 to 15 range. And it's not really just because he's inconsistent, but that does happen. It's just he has limitations, and those limitations, size is one of them, but there's just limitations he has that makes him that 12. And that's a very good quarterback, by the way. That's a guy you can win with still, as long as the pieces are around him. That's also a guy that I don't really love paying the big bucks because that handicaps your team. I kind of compare him to, and Dak Prescott, you could argue maybe he's even a little better than him, but that's the kind of player I would compare him to. You can win with Dak, but as soon as Dallas paid Dak, I was like, they're not winning anything because he needs all that pieces around him and stuff like that. And Baker's the same way. And I would put Baker and Dak kind of comparable. Now, I do want to ask you guys, because y'all obviously follow the Bucs way more than I do. I follow them obviously and talk about them a lot for the show, but as far as practice reports and stuff like that, I saw a video today that showed Todd Bowles working with the defense, and the reporter that took it made it seem like it does not happen this year. That usually he just delegates it to someone to work with the defense during the week, which I get. Head coaches sometimes have to do that. And then, but this was different. He kind of knows that the game's on the line and he needed to work with him. Is that accurate, or was that kind of misleading? What is that?
I think it was a little misleading. My buddy Rock Riley, who does a great job, he's on WDAE. He's all over the place. He said that this is something that Todd Bowles has done a lot throughout the year. He does it throughout training camp. He does it throughout the season with these practices. So this isn't anything new. I think it just happened to be new in the realm of getting caught on camera, which also kind of surprised me because It didn't seem like something that would be going on during the portion open to media. I'm surprised that anyone filmed it. But it's a mountain being made out of a molehill. Really is what it boils down to.
Yeah, and I'd liken it to, guys, I obviously work in Auburn, and we do a sports talk show at Auburn, and I know when Hugh Freeze was on the brink of being fired, there was some video of the athletic director going to Auburn's football practices, and so we would get comments about, oh, is that abnormal? Like, why is the AD at practice? What's he evaluating? Well, actually, the AD is always at practice. At least it
Right.
depends on which AD you have, but Auburn's current AD, John Cohen, is at Auburn's practice a lot. So there was nothing abnormal about that. But when you're searching for things, when you
Right.
know the job is about done, when you know there's about to be a firing, the season's become a disaster, you start to look at little things and you start to exactly what you said, James. Oh no, this is a big deal, even though it's actually not, even though it's pretty normal actually. So I would just classify it as one of those deals.
And I know coaches do delegate stuff, but when I first saw that, I was like, surely Bowles, knowing how hands-on he wants to be, is helping run the defense during practices. And so, I don't want to take any shot at a reporter or anything because I don't know what their intentions are. But I do see that a lot with reporters, that they'll film something, post it, knowing it will get the reaction from the public of, whoa, why had he been doing that all year? And I saw a lot of those comments. Why had he been doing that all year? And then to y'all's point, well, he has. you just didn't get video because when you're winning, no one cares of a video of Todd Bowles working with the defense. When you're losing and the defense is terrible, now people care that Todd Bowles is working with the defense. And so it's one of those things. But all right, coming up next, we got to talk about the injury report. There's several Bucs on the report, several that did not participate today in practice. We'll see about their availability later in the week, but we'll talk about that coming up next. Let's be real, no one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the only all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast, whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees. Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, we're back with another segment here of the Bucs Squad Show. We got to talk about the injury report. I'm looking at Tampa Bay's injury report. So there were 4 did not participate on this week, and that was Tristan Wirfs, Anthony Nelson, Benjamin Morrison, and Jamel Dean all did not participate. Baker Mayfield was a light participant, but I think he'll play. Cansey was a light participant. Gedeke was a light participant. Devin Culp was a full participant. So that's all the people that were listed on the injury report. I did see, and I can't remember who posted it, but it was one of the Bucs reporters. They posted like a week-by-week deal of Baker being on the injury report, and it feels like it's a different injury every single time he's listed on there. So that goes back to James's point last segment. He's definitely battling through stuff that we just don't know about and don't know the extent of.
Well, and just so people are aware, this has been Baker Mayfield's injuries being listed on the report since week 3. A foot and a toe, then a right biceps, a knee and a right biceps, a knee and oblique, illness, left shoulder, knee and right shoulder. That's 8 different injuries, guys. 8 different injuries for this quarterback. And you're talking about things that are impacting his ability to push the ball down the field. And I've talked about this a lot on the regular Locked On Bucs show. When your oblique is strained, you're not going to have any strength there. You're not going to be able to get velocity because of a natural throwing motion. When your plant leg has an injured knee, you're not going to be able to push through the way you normally do. We talked about it a lot, Jaron, when this squad show first started, that he wasn't running the ball because he's dealing with all of these injuries. Then he hurts the left shoulder. Now he hurts the right shoulder. It's been a complete mess. And yes, that is a reason. And one of my favorite things to say is explain to me the difference between a reason and an excuse. That is a reason that Baker has not performed to the level that we know he's capable of performing. But at the same time, you either have to find a way to orchestrate the offense within his limitations, or you have to be the grown-up and you have to say, look, Baker, you got to sit, man. You've got to give us 2 weeks. We can operate with Teddy for 2 weeks. Get healthy. We need you. What we don't need is you compounding these injuries. So that's kind of where I am on that. As far as the rest of the injury report, someone please figure out what's going on with Benjamin Morrison's hamstring. Like, he's looked good when he's been on the field, but he keeps aggravating that hamstring. I don't know if it's going to take a full offseason for him to actually be 100%. And I've seen people throw shade his way. It's like, and Jason Light's way, why would you draft an injury-prone corner in the second round? Well, he wasn't injury-prone. He had one injury that required season-ending surgery in college, and he was a consensus first-round pick going into that season. What has become injury-prone is this hamstring, and that's what he has dealt with time and time and time again this season, and it's frustrating because not only is it hurting the defense, but it's also stunting his development. So that's really frustrating. That one, the Jamel Dean, the Anthony Nelson, those are all the ones that I'm circling. Like, I think, Tristan will be fine, but those are the ones where it's like, if the Bucs are going to win this game, those 3 guys have to be available.
And a hamstring is one of those that you either have to take multiple weeks off or you almost have to just get right after the season. I mean, you just aggravate it all the time.
Yeah, hamstrings, unfortunately, as we know, are not a pain tolerance thing. You're either good or you're not on that sort. You can kind of come back maybe a week early on an ankle or something, play through a little bit of pain, but hamstring, you're going to be limited and certainly
especially at corner.
Yeah, I mean, because you don't get the luxury of taking it easy if a star wide receiver is trying to run a deep post and you're like, I'll just hope the safety's going to be there. I mean, obviously the Bucs are having enough trouble with that anyway. Look, I think when you kind of power ranking the most important guys here, I think that, okay, obviously if you're taking the 4 DNPs, you're either going Dean or worse for the most important, because I will say this about Carolina, Bryce Young was under 100 yards passing last week. And for as much as Dave Canales has worked on things in Carolina, clearly they're to a better point than they were, but they're still 8-8, and Bryce Young still has some peaks and valleys, clearly. I really would worry about Tet McMillan alone, honestly, in the passing attack. I know it played out a little bit differently 2 weeks ago in Charlotte, but Carolina does not have the litany of options that maybe a Rams do or a Lions had or something like that. When you think back to other games that the Bucs played, I don't think they have Kyle Pitts on the roster last I checked. So I don't think that they have to worry about, Kyle Pitts turning into prime Shannon Sharp or something on them. So I just don't think that they have a ton. So they don't need both the corners, but they do need a corner to worry about Tet McMillan. And then obviously with Tristan Wirfs, I think that Tampa has had an uneven performance on the offensive line this year. I don't think that is I think a lot of that is due to the injuries. I think they've had some good moments, but I think that Tristan is ultimately going to play through it. I can't imagine him not playing Week 18. These guys are knowing that this is essentially a playoff game, and even if Atlanta kind of takes that from them, they obviously cannot get in with a loss or a tie. So if it's one of those situations, week 2 or 3, some of these guys would not end up playing. Week 18, season the line, you're going to have guys kind of push the limits a little bit. And so that's just the nature of it. Again, I lament the fact that if the Bucs had taken care of business, all these guys could just end up being do not plays on Sunday. They could all just not play and do like the Chargers are doing. The Chargers against a division rival are going to sit Justin Herbert. Must be nice. Must be nice. But, so these guys, I know they're competitors. I know we've talked about the locker room and this sort of thing all season long, but I guarantee you if these guys, if these guys can play, they're going to do their best to be able to.
Now, did Morrison end up re-injuring that in the game? I mean, I don't ever really remember him going out.
Yeah, he didn't come off the field with a hamstring injury.
So maybe it's just maintenance they're doing during the week or something, not letting him practice.
I would hope so, that maybe this is a rest day, because obviously he is playing a lot more snaps now than he was earlier in the year when he was kind of being rotated in and swapping drives with Jamel Dean and everything. But yeah, taking a look, Benjamin Morrison, 100% of defensive snaps on
That's what I
Sunday
thought.
against the Miami
Yeah.
Dolphins. He was one of 3 players. Antoine Winfield Jr., Benjamin Morrison, Levante David, all 100% of snaps. Next closest to them is Servassier Dennis at 84%. So, yeah, I am kind of keeping my fingers crossed, Jaron, that you're right about this, that this is more of a maintenance or a rest day. But because he's not a veteran, they're not going to categorize him as getting a rest day. And, if memory serves, this was also a walkthrough. So the practice report is estimated based on what they would have done as far as a normal practice. So maybe this was a situation where they were like, you know what, we need you. You just played your first game, where you had 100% of snaps. Let's go ahead, chill, make sure that hamstring is good, get some treatment, do some stretches, work with the trainers, and let's make sure that you're ready to go up against Tetero McMillan, who Benjamin Morrison did a pretty solid job against him in the first go around. I mean, McMillan had an unbelievable catch through incredible coverage by Morrison, but he and Jacob Parrish both did a really good job against Tetero in the first go around. They need those guys to step up in this one.
It wasn't perfect the first time around, but I actually thought the defense played pretty solid against the Panthers. I mean, the one thing going into that game, they had to shut down the running game, and they did. Dowdle was under 30 yards. No one went over 30 yards. Now they had 4 guys go over 20 yards, and so it ended up adding up over 100. But they did I really solid, I thought, defensively. They did have their bust. I would say it's solid for how bad they've been, is what I would say. Like, if it's the Texans that had this performance, you would be like, okay, that wasn't a solid performance. But based off of what they've done, it was a good enough performance for them to win. I'll put it that way. The offense should have won that game. And so you at least feel pretty good about that you had success going the last time you played them. And as Ryan mentioned, Canales has done a really good job. They are an 8-8 pro team. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games. Bryce Young, while he has shown promise, I still don't think he has shown that he is the franchise guy. Now, he will get as many opportunities as possible because he was the number 1 pick and stuff, and he has improved. But they are not an offensive team that is just like, man, we'll throw everything at them and we just got no shot. They're a team that you can have some success against defensively, and then it's just going to be up to the offense. Can they have success? Because the Panthers are a solid defensive unit themselves.
Well, and two, you talk about Canales a little bit and Carolina's growth, and I liken what he's doing. I know it's been 2 years now in Carolina, but I liken it to how his 1 year as coordinator for Tampa went, where the first part of it was very questionable. It was not great, and it progressively got better. And I think that's kind of how Carolina's been, where it didn't just boot off the scene, but it has become gradually better and just taking increments and being a little bit better. And so I think that, when you see him, I think that's why you're having these peaks and valleys where 1 week it's like, here's the Bryce Young they drafted. Here's something that they really like. And then the next week it's like, oh my gosh, that's the 3 or 4 win Panthers right back at it. The Panthers that were searching for Andy Dalton to start for them at times. And so, that's why, the context is everything. It's like, on one hand, I mean, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. We talked about it at the time. Like, the defense did give themselves a chance against Carolina, but also there's a level to Carolina where if you have a great defense, if you can excel, you can turn them over. You can hold Bryce Young under 100 passing yards. That's one of the offenses in the league you can still really dominate if you have that kind of defense. So unfortunately, Tampa does not. One other thing that I wanted to mention on the injury report, I know it's not on Tampa's injury report. I do not know if this is a big deal. I could be just blowing smoke. I do not know. But Rico Dowdle was a DNP at practice today for Carolina. I would assume same philosophy as Tampa. I bet you he plays. I don't know if it'll be something that can be aggravated throughout the game, but something to keep an eye on because Tampa did do a legitimately good job against him and that Carolina rush attack. So if he is limited in any way, that would be, again, another way in which Tampa can just focus on how to make Bryce Young look like the bad Bryce Young, the one that's been capable of being benched.
Well, and to that point, looking at his numbers, he only has 3 games this year where he's thrown over 200 yards. Bryce Young. He has a 206-yard game against the Rams, but the other 2 were really good. He threw for 448 against Atlanta, and he threw for 328 against Arizona. Outside of that, he's only thrown over 200 yards no times outside of those 3 games. And then obviously he threw for 54 yards last week against Seattle. He threw for 191 against Tampa. So he is very unpredictable, and you can have success against him defensively. But do we have faith that the Bucs defense can do that? That's the big question. But all right, coming next, we're going to look around the NFL and we're going to dive a little deeper into that Falcons Saints game because obviously that's a massive game for Tampa if they get the win on Saturday. But there's a lot more games we're going to look forward to. So don't go anywhere. We'll get into that coming up next. Well, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it's always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on Prize Picks was quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. It's made watching games more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, we're back here for another segment of our Locked On Bucs Squad show. Let's dive into some games around the NFL. Obviously, the big one is Tampa and Carolina on Saturday, but there's some more. One of the games that I'm looking forward to outside of the Falcons and the Saints is Baltimore and the Steelers, because that one's for the division after the Steelers. Man, losing to the Browns when you have a chance to clinch the division, get some rest, like we mentioned with what Herbert is getting to do. That would have been great for your 2-year-old quarterback. But you blew that, so now you get a fun game against the Ravens. At least it's at home, so that's at least good for you. But another one is Seattle and the 49ers. I can't remember how they talked about the tiebreakers, and I can't remember. But I believe if the 49ers win, I know they win the division. I just can't remember if they get the 1 seed or they get the 2 seed. I think they get the 1 seed, but I can't remember. So that's going to be a great game because the winner would get the 1 seed, the loser would get the 5 seed and get the option to play Panthers or the Bucs. So that would be one that they're probably not upset about either way.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that really you get a prize either way. You get advance around and get a bye, or you get to play the weakest team in the entire playoffs, in my estimation, whether it's Carolina or Tampa. So again, I think that you're pretty happy either way, and I think that's why I was expecting. And again, granted, the Rams tried, but the Rams were still playing for something, even though it didn't feel like a lot when it's the 5 or the 6 seed. They were kind of shut out going into last night's game of being able to win the division. The 6 seed is having to play someone that's much different than what the 5 seed is playing. The 6 seed is going to go to probably Philly, maybe Chicago. But if it's Philly, would you rather play the reigning Super Bowl champs on the road or the 8-9 or 9-8 NFC South champ? I think that's pretty obvious. So there was still something on the line there. I think that what you talked about with the Steelers blowing it to Cleveland, Mike Tomlin's lost 4 or 5 in a row when facing a team with a win-loss record of a losing record of at least 8 games. So meaning like 4-12 or 2-10, those type of teams or worse. He's lost 4 out of 5, and the other was a tie. So it's kind of hard to figure why Pittsburgh has not been able to put away teams like that late in seasons. But I mean, that's now cost them a date with a Baltimore team that's hard to predict. I mean, I just think you run Derrick Henry into the ground, whether Lamar's back or not. I mean, that guy is one of the most unique players I've seen in the National Football League. This guy's over 30, and he looks the same to me that he's ever looked. Now, he's fumbled a few times this year, but otherwise, he's been awesome. So, look, obviously the elephant in the room is if Tampa can win on Saturday, you set up the least desirable game you'll ever watch as a Bucs fan, is having to watch a Falcons-Saints game willingly with something that matters to it. And both those teams have played. Honestly, those two teams have been playing better than both Carolina and Tampa. Now, I know Tampa's one thing, we know that, but even Carolina, as you talked about with the seesaw they've been on. New Orleans won several in a row. I know they only matter in our peripheries, but I'm going to be very interested to see if they've tricked themselves into keeping their general manager again and making Tyler Shuck their guy and that sort of thing. That's going to be questions for the offseason. But yeah, no, again, I think that, again, the league was probably thinking the Rams would beat the Falcons, and that's why the Bucs were on Saturday. And, they obviously got the heck of the matchup after the Bucs game. So, there's a few that matter. There's a lot that matter for seeding. But again, if you got teams like the Chargers taking a nap in week 18, obviously the seeding is not a big deal for them because there's some AFC stuff that can change. Again, it just feeds into, I don't have a clear favorite, James. I don't know, or Jaron, I don't know if you guys have a clear favorite, but I thought 3 or 4 weeks ago the Rams were the best team in the NFC, and I've got to back off that at least a little bit. Heck if I know. I think it's wide open.
Real quick, James, before you go, I have because he brought up Derrick Henry. Do y'all know the crazy record Derrick Henry just broke a couple weeks ago? Has to do with his own personal record.
Oh, that he just finally passed his high school rushing yard with his NFL rushing yards.
Yeah, just now.
Yeah, there used to be a rule. I think the principal of his high school instituted the rule where if the team got up by, it was like 21 or 28, then Derek wasn't allowed to play, be on the field.
Touch the ball or something.
Would allow them to score so that Derek could go back out there and run the ball some more. As far as the games this week, like obviously the most impactful are the ones that are obvious. It's Carolina, Tampa Bay, it's Seattle, San Francisco, it's New Orleans, Atlanta, because of Carolina, Tampa, which may not even matter, once that game is played. And then of course, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. But I'm really intrigued by a lot of the AFC slate, just because there's a lot more shifting that can happen in terms of seeding in the AFC than there is in the NFC. I really wish that the Lions-Bears game meant something, because I think that would be just an incredible game to watch. But, as someone who's really not going to get to watch any football on Sunday because my son is playing in a hockey tournament, I am going to be as dialed in as I'm allowed to be with this Bengals-Browns game, because I want to see Garrett get the record, and I want to see him get the record against the Bengals. I don't know if there is a team since his rookie year that Joe Burrow has struggled against more than the Cleveland Browns. And Myles Garrett is a huge reason why. Are they going to implement the Steelers strategy where they're just going to hold him and take the 10-yard penalty just so that he doesn't get the record? Or is Garrett going to toss these dudes around like rag dolls to make sure that he gets to Burrow? I am really interested in that. And then beyond that, I like I said, I wish Detroit, Chicago meant something, because I think that's probably, knowing that the Chargers are sitting players, that is by far, I think, the best matchup in terms of the two teams being really, really good on the Sunday slate. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, I mean, like, I realize it means a lot, but Baltimore's kind of stunk for most of the year. Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. So that game, I'm just kind of whatever. So yeah, it's you're going to see a lot of players playing for incentives. You're going to see the AFC seeding shift around with some of these must-win games with teams like the Patriots and the Broncos and these guys all vying for the number 1 seed.
As Ryan mentioned, I really don't know who the favorite is, because I am not a believer in the Broncos. Like I believe in their defense. I don't believe in their offense, because I don't believe in Bo Nix.
We're going to end up with the Broncos and Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's going to be the most boring game of all time. It's going to harken back to the Patriots Rams, where what did that game, like 13-9 or something terrible? Like Broncos Eagles would end 6-5, and we would all rip our hair out.
Yeah. And the Texans, I would say, are very similar to them. They're really good defensively, but I will say I trust Stroud, even though he's not been the same since his rookie year. I trust him a little more than Bo Nix, but I don't trust the Texans either. And so then you look at the NFC. Obviously, you could trust Philly just because they won it last year, but I think they got some internal issues that I don't know if they can pull it off or not. The one team that, and I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl. I'm not going to say they're going to win a playoff game, but I was really impressed by the Bears. Even though the Bears lost to the 49ers, I was very impressed by them because I was not a believer in the Bears. We always would joke on here with Marcus, like, what the heck is happening with the Bears out there? And then I watched them, and every single time the 49ers threw a punch, they threw one back. And that really impressed me. Now, defensively, I don't think they're good enough. They force turnovers, and that's a big one, obviously, but they give up a lot of yards. And so I don't know if they can win it. Again, I don't even know if they can win a playoff game. But the Bears are coming, that's for sure, because they're not an old team either. They're a young team, and Ben Johnson's got that offense rolling. And that shows right there how quickly a head coaching change, because I've been reading some of the chat. A head coaching change doesn't mean you have to rebuild, and it also can change your team just like that. And that's exactly what Ben Johnson did with them.
I mean, Liam Cohen did it with Jacksonville.
Yes, he did.
You know, and I know that's going to trigger some of these Bucs fans, but you have to remember that the plan was for Cohen to take over for Bowles when they moved up, but you can't get rid of Todd Bowles after he wins 3 straight divisions. You improved on your wins each and every year. You know, you wanted to go in there with both of them. It was Cohen that snuck off like a grounded teenager sneaking out to go to a house party. So, you know, yeah, when you get the right guy, it's not a rebuild. And the Bucs are loaded with talent to the point that it most certainly would not be a rebuild. It might be, I'll say it's like a half rebuild. You're rebuilding one side of the football because you need 2 starting linebackers. You need at least 2 edge rushers, including an alpha that's starting on the outside. Is that going to be a trade for Crosby? Is it going to be Trey Hendrickson? You know, is it going to be those kinds of things? You know, that's what you need there. You need Cansey to be healthy, but that's the side that you're rebuilding. A healthy Bucs offense, especially with a healthy offensive line, you're on the offensive side, you're going to need a swing tackle for depth. You're going to need another interior offensive lineman, and you're going to need a running back because Rashad's gone. Like I can tell you right now, I have said it all season long, Rashad is not going to come back. He's going to move on. And I wish him the absolute best. But that's all you need there. You have to rebuild the starting lineup of your defensive side outside of the secondary. And then you still have to bring in a corner because you're probably going to lose Jamel Dean in free agency. So now you need some depth there. But yeah, it's when you get the right guys with the right philosophies, it's not going to be a long, arduous process. It's going to be this year's Bears, this year's Jags, this year's Patriots. You know, that's what you're looking at for the Bucs.
Sometimes you just need a different voice too. Sometimes the voice, just the players are like, man, we've heard him say the same speech 10 times. We talked about what Baker and Bowles keep saying in the post-game interviews about, hey, it's playoff mode, and we get tired of hearing that. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes you're just tired of hearing the same message over and over, and you just need a different voice in the locker room.
Yeah, and I think that's where they're at because you can't tell me they're getting the most out of this team. This team has more in there than that. That's the whole point of the 5-1, 6-2 start. And I don't care how many close games they won. You win or lose in this league by winning or losing close games. You might get a thumping here and there, but a team wins 12 or 13 ball games, are probably winning at least half of those in one score, 8-9 point games. So, you know, I think that what you guys are saying, I agree with in totality. I mean, again, I think that a new voice, someone that I'm always an offensive minded guy, just the way the game leans now and encourages you to be creative offensively. And I know we did the exercise maybe a few weeks ago, just showing you that there's a few, it's not night and day, but there are a few more successful offensive guys out there than there are defensive guys. And so I think that you're looking for someone to freshen up the offense because I think you have the tools in place there. So you're looking for someone to get what you think you got out of the offense And then as a GM, as Jason Light, you have to rebuild the defense in the offseason. You fix the offense by bringing an offensive-minded head coach, giving you a new philosophy, new way of doing things there. You fix the defense by getting in a little bit more talent, because I think there's been a lot of debates going on this year, which how much of the defense is Todd Bowles not doing a good job this year, and how much is it that they're just shorthanded and they just don't have enough high impact players. And I think both things can be true, because they have tried in recent drafts to find a better edge rusher, to get an elite linebacker. Devin White for a couple years was looking like he was going to be the heir apparent to Lavoie David, and then he just falls off a cliff. And I think it's adorable that he has 1 million tackles for the Raiders. He's also missed the most tackles in the league. So look, I mean, again, he's getting some empty calories, and good for him. He's still got a job. But they missed on that. They try to get Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to be a good pass rusher for them. He's a flop. They've taken second and third round guys that have been okay, your Yaya Diabis and that type of thing, but they've just not been able to deliver a high impact guy in that front seven in several years. So that's going to be the mission of Jason Light in the offseason, but obviously the first mission is going to be to fix the coaching staff, and that's going to be your pathway, a hopefully simpler fix to fixing that offense.
And I know we're pretty much out of time on this segment, but if let's say they fire Bowles, like we all three think they should, at least. I know there's a lot of national people that don't think they should, but I feel like we three think they should. I'm of the belief they need to hire offense. Ryan, you mentioned it a little bit there, but I believe the next head coach needs to be an offensive minded guy. What do y'all think?
I think it's tough because the defense is what needs the most work. Right. And I know you don't want to get into a cycle of going through offensive coordinators year after year after year, but when you need more focus on the defensive side to get that right, knowing the success that you've had outside of this year, whether that's a Grizz problem, an injury problem, or a combination of the two, I think the overall team success, you could do better with a defensive head coach bringing in a solid offense coordinator, especially since really when you take a look at the leading candidates this year, the best ones are defensive minded. So that might be the direction that you want to go in, just because you want the best guy and then trust him to find the coaches to run the team appropriately.
Good point. I still personally prefer offense. I mean, you do need to hire the best candidate, period. I mean, it's silly and we'll talk about the draft later on, but that would be kind of a best player versus best fit phenomenon. But I just think the game trends so offensive now, and I just look at what's happened to Tampa, that they hired, like, to Todd Bowles' credit, after he fired Byron Leftwich, which he should have done. He did a great job with Dave Canales and Liam Cohen. That's a part of your resume as a head coach. Those were two good hires. Yes, Canales, I did not expect to be a head coach immediately. I think David Tepper was just swinging on a division rival right there. But Liam Cohen was awesome last year. The Bucs were top 5 in the league in offense. That's the guy that people should have coveted. And the Shad Khan of the Jaguars said, you know what, fine, the GM is not as important as getting Liam Cohen. And you know why? He was right about that. It appears he was right about that. And so, I think that if you have a defensive guy, your offense coordinators get poached at a higher rate than maybe the reverse being true. Like, that offensive guy just keeps that system in place. And so I can't tell you who the OC of the Rams is right now, quite frankly, because it flips all the time. And some of these really good offensive geniuses. So if that is out there, if you believe there's an offensive guy that can sustain an offensive style for years to come, that would be my focus.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, Baker's gone through 10 different play callers in his career. It's probably good to get a head coach in there that can bring some continuity there. But all right, coming up next, we'll give our score prediction and give our final breakdown of the game. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back for one final segment of the Bucs Squad Show. Again, this is just extra content that we do twice a week. Post-game show, midweek show. Once the season's over, though, both episodes will be during the week. But it's just extra content we do. It doesn't take anything away from what James does with his daily show and his post-game show as well. He still does all that and brings great content for you guys. But so I said in the beginning that I think the funniest thing is going to happen, and it's because I think the Panthers are going to win, but I just want to see the Bucs win and then the Falcons win, and just because I think it's funny and I like chaos. So I'm going with the Bucs winning the game 20-17, and then I'm going with the Falcons defeating the Saints and the Bucs get left out, which actually might not be the worst thing because two things. If you get left out, I think Bowles for sure is gone, even though I still think he's gone even if they make it, but he's for sure gone. And two, at least you end on a win.
Well, if the Bucs lose, I saw Greg Allman tweet out earlier, the best the Bucs can do in the draft order is pick 11th. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I trust Greg Allman implicitly figuring out all these tiebreakers, but you have the 8, the 9, and the 10 teams in the draft order right now, all at 6 and 10. The Bucs lose, and then those other 3 win. They're all of them are 7 and 10 at this point. So I figured there would have been a path to get into the top 10. But if the Bucs win, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say, James, that it's actually pretty simple when they do it off strength of schedule. And so all those teams that are at 6 and 10, I'm looking at right now, they have a 51.7 on the strength of schedule. So the higher the number, the more difficult it is. And the Bucs are at 53.3. So in other words, the Bucs schedule, you all have the same record. So they're going to take who did the same amount with the least, in other words. So the Bucs having the tougher schedule say, oh, that was tougher to do that record. So you'll be behind all the other teams at that record.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I didn't know, like, when you had all these multiple teams, what it was going to go to. But if the Bucs win and don't make the playoffs, they could be picking 18th. So there's a wide margin here where the Bucs could be drafting, and that pick could be crucial. If you're picking 11th and you're offering that 11th pick to, I don't know, say a general manager that used to be assistant to your own general manager in exchange for a very unhappy edge rusher in Las Vegas, might be beneficial. If you're 18th and somebody else is offering a higher pick, that also not so beneficial. Look, I said it at the top of the show. I'm going to stick with it. It's going to be more of the same. It's going to be more of the same from the offense. It's going to be more of the same from the defense. The Bucs are going to march down the field on their opening drive, and they are going to score. They are going to get in the end zone. They are going to go out there defensively, and they are going to look good on the opening drive. Might get a sack, might get a nice pass breakup, might force a 3 and out. After that, it's all going to go downhill. And, it'll stay close. They're going to give themselves a puncher's chance. But something is going to go wrong in that fourth quarter, and I think the Bucs are going to lose this game.
And in my open, I said I think their season ends on Saturday because I'm also thinking that Carolina is going to win. Now, look, part of me made me think about picking the Bucs since the Falcons did win because it's just so uniquely NFC South, not just the Bucs, so uniquely NFC South that it would come down to 2 teams that actually can't win the division the day after a game that could have wrapped up the division did not. I mean, that just inherently is NFC South. So there's a part of me that just, not for football reasons, just for NFC South reasons, says Tampa finds a way to champion out. But as I said earlier, again, they are the 3rd worst team in the NFL over the last 8 games. Like only the Cardinals and the Raiders have been worse. And that, to me, just does not scream like a team when it matters the most is going to get it done. Yeah, I don't have much confidence in Carolina. Like, if I was a Panthers fan, I would not be thinking they're going to come into Ray J and just be guns a-blazing. But I just think Tampa will make mistakes. I think that they've been turnover prone as of late. So I think they're going to have a key one of those that either gives Carolina points or takes points away from themselves. They've not gotten the middle 8 right. For a while now. I can't remember the last time they actually scored going to half and got the ball out of the second half and did something with it, or came up with 2 stops or something like that. That they don't do well in situations. And another thing, in the special teams that just continually blows my mind, and Ty Bowles confirmed it, that we are kicking out the end zone because we can't trust our kick coverage. Well, why is the special teams coordinator still there? If you cannot even cover a kick to hold yourself inside of the 35-yard line. And I get the rules, get it to where it's pretty easy to get in between the 25 and 30, but you can't even do it. And the one time they tried last week, they squibbed, obviously they got to get it past the 20. They still returned it past the 35, proving the point. Like, they are so inept, they must kick it deep and allow the 35-yard line. And the 35-yard line in the NFL is 2 first downs away from field goal range. You get inside the 40-yard line or so of your opponents, you're kicking field goals now. So you get 20, 25 yards, your field goal range. So it's wild to me that we're at this standpoint that they can't get field position there. They can't hit explosive plays. They can't get clutch stops. They can't win the middle 8. They can't not turn the ball over. They're losing the turnover battle. They're doing nothing well. So I'm not going to pick them in the most important game of the year theoretically to get it done, even in front of the home crowd, because I'm going to be there on Saturday. I'm still really excited to go, first game of the year after going to a bunch of games in previous years. So I'm going to yell my face off, but I'm going to tell you that the minute the Bucs do something wrong, I'm going to be able to feel the energy just seep out of the place. Yep. Here we goes again. That makes it uncomfortable to even be at home sometimes when you've been struggling the way the Bucs have been.
I bet there's going to be some boo birds out on Saturday. I definitely think that. I don't really have faith in them winning either. The only reason why I'm picking them is because I want to have the chaos of them, the Falcons winning. But I'm glad you brought up the special teams coordinator comment, because it was very interesting, because he said that where they don't trust him and that's why they're kicking it out. He was then asked, okay, but if you felt like you needed to make a move on mid-season, like the Rams did on special teams, would you do it? And he's like, yeah, I absolutely would do that. And he was like, but you're not there yet with special teams. And he said, no. Like, what? You just admitted you have no faith in your coverage, that you're kicking it out of the end zone to let teams start at the 35, which you as a defensive coach, it's putting your defense in a bad spot already, and it's not a great unit to begin with.
And you've had kicks blocked.
Yes,
you've had kicks blocked. You've had field goals and punts blocked. Chase McLaughlin has, fortunately, when it goes above the offensive line it gets past the line of scrimmage, it's been money for 15 weeks now. The first couple of weeks he was off, and ever since he's been great unless it gets blocked. So that's the only redeeming quality really about the special teams, because even Cam Johnson as a returner ranks in the bottom half of the league, I believe, in kick returning. And so, the Rams, you mentioned that, they fired their special teams coordinator and they blocked the kick and ran it back for a touchdown on Monday night. Yeah. And I'm not saying you get that result every time you do something like that, but sometimes there is a method to making a change. You continually do the thing that's not working and expect it to change. It's probably not going to change.
Yeah, which they fired their guy. What was it, after the Eagles game, or it was because of the Eagles game? I know, but I can't remember if it was after the Eagles game when they had the 2 blocked back-to-back. That would have been, one was a game winner and got blocked and returned, and fired him. And then, like you mentioned, their special teams are good, and then they block a kick and return for a touchdown.
I will give credit where credit is due, though, because Cam Johnson the last couple of weeks has looked phenomenal in the return game. His returns have gotten better the deeper we've gotten into the season. Not saying that's a reason to keep McGahee as your special teams coordinator, but I do want to say that McLaughlin being nails from 50 plus all year long, except for that block on Sunday against Miami, and then the late surge of Cam Johnson in the return game, those are some solid bright spots for the special teams. But yeah, this is this is going to be not fun. Like, just wrap your head around it right now. And I do see some of you in the comments, and I've been interacting a lot there, saying, this is going to be the game that the Bucs go out there and they win in convincing fashion. I actually, on my last episode, I said, this is going to be the game where they're going to go out there. They're going to win 34-14. And we're going to go, oh my gosh, this is what it could have been like all year long. And then the Falcons are going to win and they're not going to make the playoffs anyway. But yeah, it's tough. I think that we're at a stage this year with the team. They don't have any confidence. They don't have confidence in themselves. They don't have confidence in their coaches. They don't have confidence in their leadership. And it's showing. It's showing more and more by the week. And it's frustrating because this is a football team that, Ryan, you said it at the top of the show. They should have their starters on the bench because they've already won this division, or they should be competing for the number 1 seed. That's how good this team was. And it's all falling apart, man. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I can't add a whole lot to it. This is one of the most frustrating, disappointing seasons I think in I probably Bucs history. I don't want to speak before 80s and early 90s before I was even alive. So I don't want to I don't know each and every year in the expectations. But I can tell you from mid to late 90s on, and I mean, again, other than a year that you're like 2-14, 3-13, just awful. I mean, at least there, you're awful from day one. I mean, there's not a whole lot of ambiguity in that. But when you show the potential of a team and a wide open playoff picture that we just talked about, when you're the 5-1 team, you're the hot shot, you're 6-2, you're still feeling good. You to not even make the playoffs out of that is just asinine. It's just silly. If I had said that in our first Locked On Bucs Squad shows, if I had come on this show and said, "Hey guys, this is going to be really fun to do this. They're going to miss the playoffs," you said, "This guy doesn't know anything. But we need to get him off. This show does not need to exist like this." And so it's just silly that it's come to this, so disheartening, and that's why there's going to have to be a lot of changes in the offseason.
Yeah, and before we go, I do want to disagree with one comment. They said that the Saints or the Falcons would have a better chance to make a playoff run. No team out of the NFC South has a chance to make a playoff run. It's going to end for all of them. Let's be real. It's gonna. I guess there's always a way in the NFL, but yeah, it's most likely not going to end well for any of them.
Let's just put together an NFC South super team and put that team in the playoffs.
yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on the squad show. We'll be back on Saturday. It'll be me, Ryan, and Marcus that will be doing that Saturday show. We'll do the post-game recap. And then, James, you'll be able to – your Sunday, right? You're going to do a post-game on Sunday?
Yep.
Yeah, so check out James' show on Sunday. And then, of course, he'll have content the rest of the week. But until next time, fire the cannons.